I know you're about to get this full time, but I don't think you're going to take it. And I was like, yep, you know what? I'm thinking about that because I didn't feel as fulfilled in this job when I got it. I'm used to, like getting a note from a student or a parent, like, great job. Yeah, it felt good to get the kudos about my leadership, but I'm like, who was I helping? At the end of the day, what was I doing? And she was like, well, I think you think very black and white because you can be here and still help folks. And I'm like, can I? Like, where I come from, like, you should be in the trenches, like with folks helping. And she was like, you don't need to do that, right? Like, you have the ability to change course.
Welcome to Career Cheat Code. In this podcast, you'll hear how everyday people impact the world through their careers. Learn about their journey, career hacks, and obstacles along the way. Whether you're already having the impact you want or are searching for it, this is the podcast for you. Antonia, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. You and I have known each other for basically half of our lives at this point.
Probably more than at this point, right?
Yeah, it's kind of wild, but love to see your continued progress and success. So appreciate you joining today to share a little bit of your story.
No problem. I'm happy to share.
All right. So let's start by telling the world what it is you do for a living.
I currently work in financial services at Vanguard, which is an asset management company. I'm a senior sales strategist. So what that means is I basically help one of our financial advisor services businesses set its goals on the products that we currently offer to all different types of advisors around the world with our Vanguard products.
Got it. Okay. Is that what you always wanted to do?
So here's the thing, right? I don't think I dreamed of this exact role, but I knew like I wanted to be somewhere around like where money, like managing money, understanding money in financial services. Still to this day, my bigger dream is to be a CEO. If that is a Fortune 500 company or my own, that's more of like the destination role I've had in mind, but not necessarily this exact role at this exact company.
That makes sense. First of all, where'd you grow up? Where were you born? All of that. And then when we were in high school, what did that vision of career look like?
So born and raised in Harlem, New York City. Obviously went to Frederick Douglass Academy. While there, I had the opportunity to do this program called Youth About Business. I think Dr. Hodge at the time just saw like I was good at math. That was just like probably one thing I was consistent at. And he was just like, hey, have you thought about this program? This was our sophomore year of high school. So I was like, of course, like I would love to try it. It was at Columbia University. The program allowed for you to do mock mergers and acquisitions. So you worked with Black and Latino sales executives that were down on Wall Street. They explained to you what is a merger, an acquisition, EBITDA, expense ratio, all those financial terms. But then you got an opportunity to do like a fake scenario of two companies merging together. So think if like Verizon and T-Mobile were to do that, which they probably can't. They helped you think through the financial perspective of that. So imagine being 15, 16 years old, getting exposure to that. I was even you take a position as a C-suite on your team. I was the CEO at that time when there was a bunch of seniors and juniors on the team. So getting leadership early on, getting the opportunity to learn about Wall Street, learn about finance, that kind of kicked it off. And I was like, I think I like this. So I don't know if, C-suite is where I want to go, but I know like how you get there, what role you play, because there's different roles and functions. That's what I realized I'd have to learn about. So I think from that moment, I wanted to major in business. It was very clear. Every college I applied to, everything I did afterwards was very business aligned to get me into that world so that it could feel like second nature. I'm first generation, like 4-year college, forget like an Ivy League school because I ended up going to Cornell University. But with that in mind, that means you don't have a lot of people talking to you. You don't have about your next step or understanding what that next step or that next opportunity can look like. So I knew I had to like align with programs that would help me get there.
That makes sense. And for those few people in the universe that don't know who Dr. Hodge is, that was the legendary principal at FDA that kind of helped shepherd a lot of us through all of these paths. So it's interesting, right? Because part of, I think, what made FDA so great was that type of exposure to different programs outside of just, our school grounds. And just sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's just And by relationships, I mean, our principal is really good at building relationships with other pipeline programs and networks of people that were teaching youth to do different things. But what that type of exposure at, 14, 15 did for you, right? Like now you can see yourself being a CEO. You can see yourself being in the C-suite and understanding a little bit better kind of what that means and what that would actually look like, because sometimes we see things from far and it sounds appealing. And then you try it for a day and you're like, actually, that doesn't sound like what I want to do. Right. So, no, that's awesome that, programs like that and that exposure just kind of opens our eyes to the possibilities. And now, years later, you still kind of have that as your guiding light.
I would say one program, and that's another thing about Dr. Hodge, he understood like what our natural interests were, but then also your strengths. I feel like he was very direct. You knew kind of like when you were doing well at something and like, hey, you probably should stay on this course versus some other things when you weren't. But programs like Youth About Business led me into understanding different programs like SEO. So that's another Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. I did that, like a light version of that my freshman year. So going to my freshman year, and then I learned about management leadership for tomorrow. So when we think about, or when I talk about programs that helped, I felt like at every pivot, whether it was being in high school, then going into college, I knew I was going to need these programs, at least to like get the ball rolling from a confidence perspective, from a knowledge perspective, from a playbook perspective of how to do, but then also making sure I have other Black and brown people around me who are going through similar things, but also coaching you, right, or giving you advice. So I would say those specific programs, again, like Youth About Business, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, so SEO, and then Management Leadership for Tomorrow, MLT, were like three pivotal programs as I went from high school to college. I attended Cornell University. I was a part of their undergraduate business program, which is now called the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management. While there, huge culture shock. So imagine, right? Like we basically went to a HBCU, a K to 12. Like I was in all Black everything for the most part, K to 12, and then going to a predominantly white institution that was large. Our high school graduating class, 203 people. My graduating class at Cornell, 3,400 people. In my business program, I was one of 5 Black people out of the entire program, right? So understanding what you'll have to face when you go from being around people that look like you every day to not, it was intense culture shock from a racial perspective, socioeconomic perspective. And for me, this is why I sought out programs where I can see a little more people from same neighborhoods that I grew up in, but who also were going through a similar struggle, whether it was at, Cornell or Boston College or Morehouse, like a combination of different schools. But I feel like I needed to search those organizations out to make it through.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you end up applying to and getting into Cornell. I'm sure that was a very happy moment for you and your family.
Yes.
Did you go in deciding or with a major decided already, or did you figure that out once you walked through the doors?
So ironically, if you do the undergraduate business program, you really only have one major. It's called Applied Economics and Management. So I was like, okay, that's going to be my major, the specialization that I chose to do. So I had a combination of management, strategy, and communications courses that I focused in on. And then I took some education courses while I was there too. That was like an interest of mine. So I was like, how can I craft my own, curriculum while the things that you have to take. Also, because I came in low income, I was also a part of the HEOP program. So that's a program that gives you almost full tuition. You also get the opportunity to do work study. So I was very strategic about the roles I had to when working on campus to kind of help me adjust. So working in the career services office, for example, that was something I chose. Like, hey, if I know I need money on the side, even though they're covering tuition, let me make sure it's something that I'm still building a skill set to help me down the pipeline.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I was part of the HEOP program in my school as well. And, similarly, did both career aligned things, so like internships and things like that, and like part-time jobs that were building towards the resume, but also, like catering and things to like just make sure you got money in your pockets because you also want to have a good college experience. So I completely hear you and understand that part. Did you feel like, aside from the culture shift, did you feel academically you were prepared to be at Cornell?
That is in less words, kinda. Being at FDA, like especially we were around everybody was competitive. Like the students were competitive. I felt once you got to like the top 10, 15 kids, we were all super competitive. So it kept you on your toes. But you also felt like you were at a very great, which FDA is like very great school. You know, you're going to be able to go out there and compete in the world. What I ended up facing was like, yeah, I had the potential to like, they wouldn't have accepted me into that school if I didn't have the potential to make it through the academic rigor. When I got there, though, I will say the reading, the amount of reading, the amount of just like exams, I did not have experience. I was not tested and given as much homework as I experienced once I got to Cornell. In addition to that, I was sitting around people who they were used to this. Like our AP classes that we finally got into more the tail end of high school, they've been burning multiple of those since freshman year or were in boarding school. So like they were used to being away from home. They were used to having to do this stuff on their own. Life experiences. You have people who are used to traveling the world. So when we are in classrooms, especially about business, right? If your family comes from this background or you've had the opportunity, we're doing a business case on Colombia and you actually are from Colombia, but like the higher echelon, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm competing with people who have worldly experiences that I didn't necessarily have at that age. So for me, it was kind of overwhelming. I did seek out, so we have a learning strategy center at Cornell, which I end up meeting with like one of my best friends to this date. She worked there where I was trying to learn better test taking strategies, better strategies on reading comprehensively faster, because the amount of reading that they dish out at that school was bananas. And then you had to like take an exam. So prelims, which are the exam before midterm, if you will, plus your midterm and finals. Getting used to that. It was intense.
No,
But I will say, like, FDA gave me the grit to understand I've made it with less resources. So just find the resources and go to them. It's kind of like when you used to go to the college office. Once you figured out that was a good place to go to get ready, to apply for colleges, it was like, okay, learning strategies. I clearly need to take in this stuff a lot faster than I'm used to in a short period of time. Let me go where the help is. I also felt no problem with that. I was not embarrassed by it. I'm like, if I'm going to compete out here, I'm about to use all these resources the school has to make sure. Signing up for tutors did that as well because I was not trying to fill out.
No, of course. That makes a lot of sense. And I know, so aside from like tutors, and you mentioned some of the programs that you joined that helped you kind of form or solidify your career path. At FDA, you were very involved, right? Like you were the president of our class. You were like top student always. And like, we know that because we posted our grades, right, at FDA. So you can walk down the hallway and see where you stand so that people were like, okay, now we got to get higher. And that adds to that competitiveness that you mentioned, right? So, but it's like friendly competition. We peer mentored and did all the things, push each other. Anyways, so while you were at Cornell, did you also do other things that helped you kind of ingrain in the culture of the campus and do things with the student body?
Yes. So I started with BSU, so the Black Student Union. I was involved with that aggressively, probably from like freshman year all the way through senior year. I later joined because as my interest in business grew, I was like, okay, I need to align myself to your point, right? Like you said, you did some internships during college. I was like, let me align myself to roles in organizations to ensure that like, hey, I'm learning about money, managing a budget. One of the first big experiences I had was running or being the president of the African American, Latino, Asian, and Native American Programming Board. In less words, it was like the underrepresented folks, the group, for all around Cornell. The budget was about over $100,000 that you allocate for programs that would uplift our communities, help share awareness about our communities to the entire Cornell population. So I helped run that, managing that budget. Also pledged, so part of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I was the treasurer of my chapter while I was at school. I joined our CU Tonight, which is the school's like late night programming board. Again, well over, I think even half $500,000 to allocate to different school programs. And then the Minority Finance Commission. So that specifically gave money to the minorities or underrepresented groups at Cornell. When you hear me say that, like event planning, large scale, giving out money, managing budgets, and many of the underrepresented groups, organizations that I was a part of, I was also coaching these groups, right? Like, this is what you need to do to get this money, in less words. But like, how do you run an effective event? How do you work with vendors or like in the ecosystem to put on meaningful stuff for our community? And that's what I found myself being just like naturally passionate about. Like, I'm not just going to, be out here. I can do this for my chapter, or I can do this just for BSU, or I can do this for all of us. And we figure out how to better, collectively help each other. Through that, I feel like I was able to make very strong, like lifelong friendships in the community at Cornell, but then also serve as a leader to those who don't identify as a minority or underrepresented group, and learning more about like what we have to offer, what are our different programs about, and the nuances, what are our experiences about across the board. So those helped shape more of the cultural aspects. So talk about creating community where I didn't necessarily always feel like I had one. It started much so in those programs that gave life to campus, right, to student life.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so talk to me about your mindset. We're getting to senior year of college. Everyone at that point is thinking about what the next steps are. In your mind, what does life after graduation look like during your senior year?
Well, one, we're recovering from a recession. So that was a big hit for every person majoring in business. It was like, oh, financial services has shut its doors for opportunities. What do you want to do in the interim? For me, I was always about like building skill set and experiences. Forget whatever the job is going to be. I'm still want to make sure I'm equipped, right, with like transferable skill set. Teach for America. Get the opportunity. And a lot of this starts with applying for different types of financial services opportunities and them saying like, we're not extending any offers to folks right now while we're adjusting to the recession that we're recovering from. It's like, okay. Then I go to my coach in MLT, so Management Leadership for Tomorrow. And she's like, Antonia, well, I notice you're helping out a lot around campus. You're out here giving out, like you care about the community. Talk to me about some of your values. I'm like, yeah, I also help out in like Ithaca Commons, or like it's like down the hill from Cornell, but it's also a community of people who are actually pushed out of New York, and they choose to live upstate New York. And, like they have formed a smaller community there. And they're like, wow, like you help out with that. You still tutor. Seems like you're very community oriented. Have you thought about like ways you can find a job there? I'm like, well, I'll need some type of income. And she was like, have you thought about Teach for America? Like working for them first to get a taste of what they have to offer before you would want to even be a teacher. I was like, no. She was like, well, try this program out and let me see what you think. Again, trusting my future. So me thinking strategically is like, hey, I still want to build a skill set, but what aligns to my values? Talking to a coach who's like, hey, heard that. Here's an opportunity. Me believing in this coach and trusting her and taking that opportunity led me to interning with Teach for America in Mississippi. So taking a girl from Harlem, never been to the South, right into Mississippi for the summer, where I worked for the Institute management team. So we actually helped open the first Delta State, or like Mississippi Delta Institute for Teach for America. So all the logistics and management required to run a Teach for America Institute, learned that over the summer, had a chance to actually go visit some schools. And I think that's where I was able to see, like, can I do this job? So like, yep, I can do the management. I can help run, the budget for the Institute, but can I actually be the teacher? Can I be the principal that I saw working in there, right? Like it's a different beast when you are actually doing that and having the ability to work with students. And I had this, one of the directors, John Self, I believe that was his name, very good coach. He was like, hey, Antonia, I see you have a kind of interest. Pulls me in one day and shows me like, what does it take to run a school? What his teachers have to go through, what, ways that he already saw, like, and how I was already performing for my internship. He's like, you'd probably crush this. So think about it. Take that information, get back to Cornell. I'm like, wait, Teach for America is actually a great organization. I'm helping them recruit more folks. And I'm like, I can't just be recruiting, selling the sauce and not believing if I can do this myself. So I do extra research. I'm like, okay, I want to go somewhere again where I'm going to have the support. I'm going to have community. And then people are going to take me to the next level I can't even imagine. So when we say that, it makes me think about like the regions. Atlanta was the first one because they are very good at developing Black Black leader teachers or whatever. So if you want to be a principal, you want to run a school district, Atlanta was the best place to go. Second was Houston, and then home. New York was third. I apply and I get Atlanta. That is my destination. And that's fall of senior year. get the opportunity. So I commit. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going to Atlanta. I'm getting more friends. I'm helping them recruit to come on to Teach for America. Even got, Sophia, one of my best friends then, to come to Atlanta and do Teach for America. My second semester, we got a notification like, hey guys, we know you signed up. You're going, you're doing Teach for America in your regions. Here's an opportunity if you want an internship between your first and second year. I'm like, yeah, give me more money because I know I'm not about to get much being a teacher, but I would definitely sign up for an opportunity. You just submit your application and they reach out. They don't tell you who it is until you submit your application. Turns out the corporate sponsor for the internship was Goldman Sachs. So I graduate with knowing I'm definitely in the classroom in Atlanta, but then an opportunity to intern with Goldman Sachs between my first and second year. That would go on and set the pace for the next 5 years of my life, which probably influenced literally you fast forward to today of that foundation of starting there.
I mean, there's a lot there, right? Because there's the courage to say, you know what, let me move out of what I know, right? Mm-hmm. and try to figure this out. There is a kind of understanding that you still want to do business, but you're really intrigued in this opportunity to give back and to learn about what working in a school would look like and how that can shape your career. And you can apply both your knowledge of business and your understanding of community to build a career potentially. So talk to me about what that looks like when you walk into Goldman Sachs in between your year after graduation and the fall, when you then move to Atlanta and start figuring out what to do there.
I actually kick off in Atlanta. So do the first year of teaching. It was tough. I taught in an inclusive classroom. So you have students who have individual education plans and those that do not. Also was one of the first 5 Teach for America teachers in my school building. So dealing with the anti-Teach for America feelings that come with some of the more conservative schools in the South. Challenging, but doable. And I was able to outperform, like my students, although they had not passed any math state exam in 6th grade, they passed and excelled their 7th grade with me. So talk about results, was able to do that. Taking that win of I felt my first year of teaching and going to an office in Goldman Sachs, such a different world. I want to say, like, when I look back on my experience at Cornell, that is what trained me, if anything more, sitting in those classrooms, to be able to head on with the culture. It was very much I would say it's feed you to the wolves kind of. It was learn over your shoulder model. No one's here to babysit you. No one's about to tell you how you need to do your job. You need to figure that out on your own. So me being able to build curriculum, which I did in my first year. So for myself, what do I need to learn? I sat in trade management. So we oversaw 5 different desks. So imagine like a middle office, if you will. You have portfolio managers, you have trade management, and you have like back office folks who are helping making sure things, compute through computers and account systems all look right. It was a steep learning curve. But again, I was able to learn things or teach myself things in a short period of time, but also teach those around me. So talk about leveraging what I'd done in the classroom. I realized, one, my whole team would move slow if I didn't share how quickly I got it. I learned a concept with those around me. 2, when you're doing presentations collectively and you're a winning team, they love to see that in internship. They like to see your ability. And 3, like the natural leadership that it showed for me, because I was interning with folks who were juniors and sophomores. So they hadn't even gotten to their first full year. So I should be able to run, a circle or 2 around them. But I do that. One of my managers there, he notices my ability. He's like, wait, you could have been the lone star and said, you're about to celebrate and we saw that in you. But what we thought was probably the best source of high performer, your ability to influence others, your ability to also bring up the team of analysts. And you didn't have to do that. We don't set y'all up. There's no incentive for you to do that, Antonia. And he said, and that's why I wanted to give you the full-time opportunity. So that leads me going into my second year of teaching, knowing I'm about to get a full-time opportunity. I have one of the mentors. She reaches out to me at Goldman before I leave to go start my second year of teaching. And she's concerned, like, hey, Antonia, I know you're about to get this full-time, but I don't think you're going to take it. And I was like, yep, you know what? I'm thinking about that, because I didn't feel as fulfilled in this job when I got it. I'm used to, getting a note from a student or a parent, great job. Yeah, it felt good to get the kudos about my leadership, but I'm like, who was I helping? At the end of the day, what was I doing? And she was like, well, I think you think very black and white, because you can be here and still help folks. And I'm like, can I? Where I come from, You should be in the trenches, like with folks helping. And she was like, you don't need to do that, right? Like you have the ability to change course. And I was like, I was like, one, I've never had someone tell me I was like not doing enough or thinking too black and white. So for her to say that to me as a black woman sitting, managing director at Goldman, I was like, well, one, ma'am, you don't even know, where I come from or what I've been through to be sitting in front of you here today. And she was like, I know that, but I understand it though. And I see your potential of what you can do. And I was like, okay, is this a divine intervention point? Is this someone who needs to talk to me to get me past like, yeah, I'll get this offer, but I'm staying in my classroom. So I listened to her. First 2 weeks in my second year, get a phone call from Goldman. I actually still have the voicemail on my phone today from 2012. Hey, Antonia, like this is Goldman Sachs. We have great news for you. Call us back. It was at the end of a long school day, like the first 2 weeks of school. And it was 8th grade. I moved up my students. So they're coming back, different mentality. And I just remember thinking like, wow, okay, I got the offer and I'm going to take it. Now, what does that mean too? I'm also leaving the classroom, leaving something I felt like I built up. You are the CEO of your own world. These kids actually meant a lot, still to this day, mean a lot to me and me being able to help them and their family and the parents that I've gotten a chance to get really close to. So there was a part of grief that came with understanding if I do leave this world, what I'm going to walk into, what my day-to-day is going to be like versus what I know I experience here engaging with students. But what I had to do, and I think you mentioned this word, and I don't usually talk or use this word to describe myself, but it's courage. Courage to follow the sight of others who may have been in the steps before you and to listen and be like, okay, I'm not going to be stubborn about this, or I'm not going to be too short-sighted in what I think I need. I'm going to trust. And I'm going to think that, this woman's going to have my best interest. And she did. Once I got back to Goldman, she was like, let me show you how you can still do, right? Like what you said you wanted to do. So yes, you'll have your job still in trade management, but you said I was a part of Let's Get Ready. We were part Let's Get Ready, which was an SAT prep program. MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. SEO, you were part of these. Goldman, we sponsor Teacher America. We sponsor all of the organizations that have shaped you. Youth About Business to this point. You now get a chance to sit in the seat from the organization and be an ambassador of Goldman to help out, to get some, and influence our people here to help in the community. You can maximize your impact. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. So like if I fast forwarded that to like even what I'm doing now at Vanguard, just recently helped create a partnership with the School District of Philadelphia. Does that have anything to do with my day-to-day? Absolutely. But do I care about it? Yes. I help out currently building a sales fellowship program at Howard University. Did I go to HBCU? No. Do I feel very strong about creating pipeline for Black talent here at Vanguard? Yes. So I work through that. I also help out with MLT recruiting here at Vanguard. So like things that have been very true to my values, true to my core and my strengths. I've been very consistent no matter what role in financial services I've been in. And I still to this day thank Jill Rosenberg Jones. She was at Credit Suisse. She might still be there now. But she was the one who told me like I didn't have to exist in a world of just Black or white. I didn't have to struggle. I can still come and make money and try to make a generational change for myself and my family while also still giving back to the community. Only someone who knows that and knows how this world works in financial services could give you that ability to even think that way and show you how to network properly once you get into these orgs to get that type of impact externally.
But it also says a lot about you to be coachable, right? Like there's a lot of value in you seeking programs that continuously put you in a situation to be mentored, to be coached, to learn from, to build networks, to understand other people's pathways and how you can apply pieces of that to your life. Or like you're not going to just take copy and replace to your life, but you take pieces. And even with advice, there are times when it may not apply to you, right? But you're willing to listen and you're willing to figure out how to use some of that knowledge to influence your decision making. And I think that's extremely valuable, and that's an underrated skill set is the ability to be coached. So kudos to you for that.
And staying in that mindset, no matter how senior or tenured or how many accolades are around you. I looked at one of your questions and you were like, what's advice? Or if you look back over the years, and I was just like, network, I think Issa Rae said this, right? People get so bent on networking up, and you forget about the lateral, and you forget about those who are, below. So for me, I would say everyone like is a resource, and your ability to see that earlier on of ways that you can help. So back and forth, like, how can I help you? How might you be able to help me? And us being open to that consistently. That's how, like, long-term relationships are built at work, outside of work. A lot of that is like, hey, already, I know you're interested in this thing. Like, I just saw this post. Let me make sure I slide it to you because I know you're trying to build something. Not necessarily expecting in return, but because I know, right? Like, the more you can do that for folks, it just goes a long way. And I know some people, like, networking is not for everyone, and it does take energy. I'm not about to say it doesn't take much energy. It doesn't take prep. It doesn't take, some structure of making sure, we follow up with each other and keep relationships warm over the years. But I would definitely say that I would continuously tell my younger self, and even reminding my present self and future self, like, making sure to do that, like, life would just feel a lot better. You don't have to do it alone. The more you know that you have a network and a community out there, whether they're family, friend, other.
I love it. Tell me about when you're at Teach for America, and remind me, Teach for America puts you in a situation where you go into a classroom for like 2 years, 3 years. And in between that, in the summers, you're getting internships, you're getting exposure to business, which is a much different world, right? But you find a way to merge them all. And now you're thinking about taking this, or you're about to take this opportunity to work at Goldman once you complete your obligations with Teach for America. What are the
benefits? So that was a specific program.
Yeah.
Teach for America it's literally built to place folks at first into classrooms, like your best and brightest into the highest need classrooms around America. That's their root cause. But then they understood, like, education, that's not the only important piece. Like, the classroom, especially the classroom, the teacher, and the ecosystem of what influences and runs our education system that controls what our young people experience and learn. There's some other key portions of that. Unless you apply to a specific program, you're not offered anything to do in the summer. So some people go back to their schools and teach summer school. Some people go find another internship anywhere else. But they traditionally want you to, do your thing or take off, go have your personal time off. But then TFA, you commit to the 2 years, you can do more than. They want you to figure that out. And we have, like, I remember our training weeks that we would have once a year where they expose you to the other key players in the ecosystem. So that might include, like, I worked in district schools purely, but charter school networks. If you want to work in a charter school network, that was a huge opportunity. If you wanted to become a lawyer and policy around education reform, if you needed to be in a space that gave dollars, right? So social impact investing for education. Teach for America exposed you to, like, ways that you can still be a part of the ecosystem. You can either be the teacher in the classroom, the superintendent in the office, the lawyer fighting for educational reform, or the person helping get private dollars into both public education. So that's their bigger, I would say, program. But yeah, some people go like, okay, I'm going to have this experience. It's going to help me go into law school. And I know I'm going to want to help, fight crime as a result of that, because we see students being pulled out in the school to prison pipeline is real. That might be a way that I see a lot of people actually go the lawyer route versus the business route. I mean, after teaching middle schoolers, adults don't scare me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you learn how to deal with people at their core. Like, how do you like to learn? How do you like to engage with folks? What are some of the things? I still use that skill set today. Ability to break things down as simple, as for someone in 5th grade to someone who's executive and doesn't have a lot of time. You need the high level bullet points in a way that they can understand and digest the information. So I feel like a lot of the training that you get in Teach for America, or becoming a teacher, period, that is like life skills forever. And your ability to influence, teach, and, like, community build in any world you go into. A lot of that started with Teach for America. And yeah, they had us, I think I graduated May 31st or May 30th, was in a classroom down in Atlanta the next day. Literally drove one day and was down there. So talk about turnaround time. Not much, but they are very intense on the training, and I'm grateful. I will at least say, like, I'm grateful for it because I see it still paying dividends years later.
Wow, look at you dropping all the cheat codes. Appreciate it.
This that's what's like starting in the classroom. If you want to be courageous, learn, but also you'll need support, which also I learned over the years as we watched folks who went into the classroom who didn't do Teacher America. It's like that development that you get is super important. So much that when you go into your classrooms, you have what you need, even when you don't have what you need. Right? Like I didn't have any resources or textbooks, but I had Teacher America behind me to help me figure out how to build curriculum from scratch, how to do behavior management. When you have a combination of all types of things going on in your classroom.
Okay. Tell me about that transition from the classroom to Goldman.
I would say one, the workday is different. So you're not like your literal day to day. I would get in like early up. That's why I'm early riser here. You naturally get up early. You're setting yourself up for the rest of the school day. You're going to have repeats. So you're about to run a lesson 5 to 7 times with a group of students. So you're prepping what you need to get out of it. And you're going to get different responses for each period with each different students. So your brain power, the ability to be agile early in the morning, high energy, thinking on your feet and be engaging. We would say we were actresses or actors because sometimes you didn't feel that way. Whereas you come into corporate America, they're not always with the rah-rah here. You don't need to be a cheerleader super early in the morning. A lot of it is based off of what you need to do or what I'm prepping my team for and what we have to get done for the day. And then you go. So whatever your function is, for me right now, I'm a sales strategist. So it's a lot of strategy. How am I setting strategy, following up with key stakeholders, managing that to move them along? So a lot of project and program management involved with it. I have a lot of data analysis, got a lot of that to do this morning. Being able to digest information, come out with a synthesized idea of, hey, this is exactly where we need to go, or based on this data, this is exactly where I see us going. They're big on socializing. So now you come up with this idea or strategy, you then have to socialize it. You're not doing much of that and when you're in the classroom. So for me, the skill set that I felt like I was quickly able to bring over here is like explaining things to folks or breaking things down, still thinking quickly, but understanding because so many people are more involved with big decisions, especially at the level I'm at, it takes a while to get to the final end of something. Whereas in my classroom, if I saw a class was learning something very quickly, I could pivot the lesson midway through, take you to the next component you need to learn. Or if I notice actually this is not going over well, slow it down. And still, at the end of the day, I'm managing my portfolio of classes of different humans who need to achieve a certain grade level, right, by a certain time. Here, when you're monitoring, when you're a manager, people's personal goals, how they want to develop, then you have like business goals that they need to develop on. It's just a different, still portfolio, smaller, very much smaller. So less intense because, sometimes, well, no, actually, that's probably the good transformation of being a teacher to a manager in corporate America is that you're responsible for somebody's career. I at least take that very seriously. So just like I was managing my students and like what they needed to do where they were trying to grow, I also do that here too with folks. So what is most important to you? And this is not even just in my day-to-day, even the different programs I'm involved here at Vanguard, I look out for what are they trying to grow as a person and make sure we're tracking towards that. So that's probably similar, but outside of that, the day-to-day is just really different. It involves more people, slower pace than the classroom because you only got 180 days and you got to get things done. Here, it depends on the project. You can wrap up a strategy project, done. You get another one. There'll be another one. Oh, something went a bank failure. Oh God, something shifting in our world. We have to move, but still the decision, because Vanguard is a place that like they want to make sure that whatever we represent 20 million people and we have their money, right? Almost $8 trillion under assets. When we make decisions, we have to be very like sure about that. So that's probably from a impact and responsibility level. Here, it's like you don't want to mess up. Like they'll give you space to, fail a little bit. They say fail fast here and fail cheaply, but they don't want you messing with other people's money. We're different from other financial services companies because if you have a Vanguard account, you own it's your money. So we're owned by our investors. Whereas other people are more for-profit organizations like BlackRock or Fidelity. Those are organizations that they go for profit. We don't. All of the money we have is our clients.
Got it. Okay, so you've been with Vanguard for a while, so clearly they're doing something right there. Tell me about what your role looks like today versus when you first walked in the door, and how that kind of trajectory has gone. Because I think it's a lot to be said with growing internally and doing and being able to like not be necessarily in the same team, right? Like you've grown throughout different parts of Vanguard, and I think if you position yourself in a large enough organization, that's very doable, and that's something that you can build a good career doing. So we'd love to hear about kind of how you've been able to do that.
So I came through to Vanguard through the MBA Leadership Development Program. So I was very big on, hey, coming out of business school, I did do an education consulting project between my first and second year, thinking, hey, do I want to go back into education? It did not pay enough, in less words. Great impact, great influence, saw what I could do, but was not paying as much as I was like, there's no way I can go back to like, not even back to like 50K or less after taxes. So I was like, okay, I want to be in a place, if I'm going, my next role, I need to be developmental because I need to keep learning, right? Get back on the wheel. I just left financial services, took 2 years off, and now I'm getting back into the workforce. I need to be at a place that's going to allow me to continue to volunteer and also use their dollars, people empowered to do that. It's a part of my, my values. I want again, C-suite is still a goal from when I was, 15, 16 years old. How are they going to be able to do that for me? So the MBA Leadership Development Program here is exactly that. You come in very senior. You get the opportunity to have a manager, a program manager, and your rotation manager. So it's a rotation program, 3 5-month rotations. You get a chance to talk through what is the experience, what is the skill set, and what roles are you trying to get exposed to. And I was like, yes, when I was in business school, everybody was a consultant. I just came from being an education consultant. Give me more consultative work, because that's a transferable skill set. And it reminds me of business school. So a lot of like cases we would have, you basically listen to the client, try to figure out how to help them problem solve, and provide them with a recommendation on the move forward. I was like, I like that. Everyone has issues anywhere. And I need to be diverse. So I need to know what it's like to deal with issues that might sit in our retail business, so that directly faces individuals, our institutional business that faces like colleges and other institutions like that. And then right now I'm currently in the advisor space, which faces all types of advisors, RIAs, broker dealers, banks, other asset managers. So I started in what we call our organizational consulting services. That role allowed me to figure out how Vanguard as an enterprise works, how each of the 12 divisions works, and what are their biggest organizational issues that they need consultants on, and how to problem solve at like a 20,000 person organization. That was a fantastic role. It gave me like a heat map of like, okay, where are the issues? What are these roles happening across the company? Who are the leaders? How are they shifting? So I was like, cool, that was great. I'm in financial services, I'm in asset management. My second rotation, I wanted to be in what we call advice. So essentially, financial literacy and advice that you give out to individuals, institutions, and advisors to help them. There's not many Black people at all in that space, or Black women more specifically. And I'm like, you sit in that Vanguard, you need to learn this. Became a product strategist for that. So learning about our advice products here at Vanguard, which you should, that's what they tell us to, build your investment acumen. My third component was like, okay, I have heat map of the organizational, the design and how things are working at the enterprise level. I'm also understanding our biggest like offer from an advice perspective and how we do it across the 3 different businesses that we have here. And then the third component was like, okay, now walk me through how do I use the skill set that I know to help one of these businesses. So I was able to do what we call a business transformation for our retail investment group. That allowed me to dig a little deeper into one business instead of just sitting at this like enterprise level with the other 2 roles, being able to click down into that. My 4th role, so I banked 5 years this summer. I'm on my 6th role. So you think about rotation. My 4th role was launching out of the 3 5-month rotations. That allowed me to go, hey, loved how this worked. I need to figure out, Vanguard's at a transition right now. What do leaders need so that when I think about the pathway up, I'm continuously getting that level of exposure. Well, the way we work is changing. That was 2019 to 2020. And what did we experience in 2020? A pandemic, which completely changed how we work. So sitting in an organization, what we call new ways of working, more like future of work, had the opportunity to leverage a skill set I never even thought I would need. And now we need it every single day while sitting there. And then now, since that role launched into my senior sales role here in our financial advisor service business. So how organizations work, how they mature, that's what you need. If you're like going to be in C-suite, you have to know how these big companies, big or small, how they operate. Two, being able to understand investment acumen while sitting at an investment management company and how it works in our products, how we sell. I didn't have a sell component to me, which is why I decided to be in the role right now. So like, what are we doing to get our name out there? So when I look at the Antonia Vanguard resume, it shows organizational consulting, but like leadership, business transformation, program management. It's like, in order to be what I would deem like a general manager, which are those essentially those selected to continue to lead the organization, having very specific skill set that it takes to run an organization. So understanding the people, the way they work, how we drive business, so sales, strategy, product strategy. That's where I'm at right now. I want to double down into the future. If you're like, okay, what's the step before C-suite? That next step, it would be in product management. So understanding, again, we're at another pivot point. Our competitors are catching up to us, right? So at some point, everybody's going to have something similar to offer. It's going to be product innovation that's going to keep Vanguard ahead. And in millennials, we're not as well versed with the Vanguard name brand. Parents are, older folks are. So what we need to do is like get out to the millennials more and make sure it's a product that we would want. Because we're a different group than Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So I like to be on the edge of like what's coming up next and thinking about what next skill set do I develop now to get there. Sorry, I'm also using my hands a lot, but I'm a visual person, so
I get it. I speak. Yeah. I'm Dominican, Antonia. I speak with my hands all the time, so I get it.
Yeah.
You mentioned business school, and one you went to, arguably 1, 2, depending on the year, business school. Right. 1, 2, 3, whatever. Tell me about what made you want to go to business school, how your experience was, and if you think you got what you wanted out of it, because that's a big decision. That is a big investment. That is an expensive investment. That is a time commitment. That is a pivot in life potentially, right? Like that is a lot. So tell me about that.
Your income on pause. So I realized. So if we take it back really quickly to being at Goldman, I'm working at Goldman. Within the first year, I'm like, I'm not gonna be here forever. But we're also like at that point, in order to make a transition to another company, you were experienced hire. When you're experienced hire, you had to have 5 to 8 years in a role or at a company. I didn't have that. I was a millennial. Like millennials, we different jobs. Max had worked at one job at that point was 2 years. So talked to one of my MLT coaches. She was basically like, hey, I need you to stay at Goldman a little longer. So you need to at least stay there for 2 years. You got to show that you can stay at an organization for a little bit of time. But then if you want to pivot, your only next pivot outside of at least staying at 2 years at Goldman is business school. And I was like, do you know how hard it was for me at Cornell? Like, I have to go back to school. And she was like, listen, every Black woman you see at Goldman, double check their resume. And I did. All have MBAs. When you look up in C-suite and you see Black women in financial services or in Fortune 500 companies, check their resume. What do they have? All have MBAs. And I was like, okay, I got it. That's the secret sauce, right? Like, if someone would have shown me that light any sooner than that, I'd be like, oh, of course I have to go to business school. But she painted that picture for me, like, Antonia, you want to get there, you're going to need a little bit. And it's not even, she says at some point, it's not going to be what you know. And as of right now, all you've been operating on is like, oh, I need to know this, learn this, and I'll be great. It's going to be who you know once you start to make it up that. And I was like, okay, heard you. It took me about 1.5 years and 5 GMAT. The GMAT is a beast. And it's also expensive. So talk about God aligning me to a role, an organization that allows me to have enough money to take the GMAT is $250 5 times in 1.5 year time span and pay for courses out of my own pocket to take those GMATs. It's not for, which is crazy, right? Because it already prices out some people. Like as a teacher, I would not have been able to afford any of that to prep for the MBA, to get the GMAT, to get my MBA program. Applied to it. I decide after going through a year and a half of that, I'm going to business school. I didn't do all this work. I'm going to business school. I use the MLT MBA prep program. Again, they have the playbook of what do you need to do to get into business school. Ended up getting into, I think, Ross first, so Michigan, go blue, that school first, and then second got into Wharton. Both schools gave me well over $100,000 in grant money. Chose to go to Wharton, closer to home. I knew Wharton was a personality fit. It was like from that perspective, but I also knew like I was about to be challenged heavily academically. If I thought Cornell was hard, I just went to one of the strongest quantitative school like in the world from a financial perspective. And every course you take will have high quantitative aspect to it. So if you ask me again, did I feel like I was academically prepared? I would say Cornell got me used to being marked on a curve, meaning you're as smart as the smartest person in the room. So they set the bar, and then if the highest was a C, that's the A. But then you go to Wharton, and the highest is an A plus, so your B is almost failing, right? Like so, different world, different beast of folks. So academically, it was tough. When it came to social, I thought I was an extrovert coming in. Met super extroverts from all over the world. So again, met with competitive spirit, but also community. I think a lot of people realize if we're going to be our own network moving forward, you have to be cautious of that. Like these are not just friends like college, like these are people who will be sitting at the top of organizations. You probably want to, be more strategic about networking and like how do you build with them. So I feel like I did that, had the opportunity to talk about leadership. So I ran for class president, became the first Black cluster president, or they have cluster presidents
Of course you did.
in Wharton's history. And it was like, that was when I heard about it, I was like, oh, I won, like, this is great. And then I was talking to like one of the student life leaders and he was like, Antonia, you like, did they tell you? I was like, tell me what? He was like, you're the first Black like person that we've had to win. Like you were voted by your peers. And I was like, really? Well, this is great because I didn't go in knowing that. So talk about roots of self was like, I just would love to lead, my cluster. But when you find out, oh, I actually happened to do that, that was a win that I didn't even know that I was creating. But then talk about the time period. That's 2016 to 2018. This is when we started the protest. Additional gun violence is happening. So even being Black in Philadelphia at Wharton, luckily the school was behind us in solidarity of anything that was going on. But we were the first to do things. So I would be sitting with other presidents at other schools, helping out like Stanford, so graduate school, GSB of business, helping out Kellogg, like talking to their presidents of how they get their schools to rally behind a lot of the issues that were going on in the Black community then. Also holding our school accountable during that time to make sure we have it. So definitely building solidarity across cultures at Wharton, but then also was very involved in the African MBA Association as well during my time there. So I would say it was a good investment. It still is the most expensive thing I've invested in collectively. Looking back, I wouldn't change it. Again, it's given me another community of people, a different way of life, of thinking. I'd never left the US before going to Wharton. Had the opportunity to do 13 countries in those 2 years. So talk about, and most of it was off the dime of the school. So all through global immersion programs, again, being strategic, get to know the programs office anywhere I go. But highly would recommend it, but it's not for it's not for everyone. It does take a commitment. You also take a break from, not a break, but your friends and family need to make sure however you stay into contact with them, that's going to be a strain. If you have a spouse, that's going to be a strain because the 2-year program is very much immersive. Now, for folks who would ever consider executive MBA, that's different. You do that on the weekend. You still have your job. Your job is paying for you to go to that program. So I would say for those looking for the full-time experience, just know when they say full-time, it's emphasis on full time.
Yeah.
For it.
And I mean, and it's full time, and it's also, I know you and I spoke about this, but life doesn't stop because you're in an MBA program, right? So life will continue to throw challenges at you, and you are mentally, financially, emotionally committed to this program, and life happens. I welcome you to share any curveballs that life may have thrown your way during that time, and how you were able to kind of persevere and overcome.
Yeah. So I would say probably again, still to this day, knock on wood, because I still have one more parent left. I think it was the 2 months after I just told Goldman, like, hey, I'm going to business school. I celebrate with my mom. Tell my family, again, they still are unsure what all this additional schooling is for and why am I leaving my job. But my mom was like, I remember like every day she'd call and be like, oh, you're studying again, or oh, you're going to pass that test, you're going to get it. Celebrating with her, only for 2 months later for her to have a heart attack. And at this point, already quit Goldman, already signed to go to school. So pretty much committed to continue this path and to business school. But then she has a heart attack, which leaves her in vegetative state, which again, scariest phone call, scariest experience. I think from that moment she had the heart attack, I was in a hospital, like sleeping in the hospital up until I had to move to Philadelphia. While in Philly, every 2 to 3 days, calling and or going back to do blood transfusions, talk to doctors, leveraging and not networking, but like using my friends in New York. So talk about those friends from Cornell or those friends from FDA who are nurses and doctors and getting their insights while I'm helping to manage what's going on in the hospital with my mom, but also doing what I have to do like down here in Philly on campus, helping my family figure out, my sister is the single mom. She depended a lot on my mom during that time, how she's going to, continue to move forward. My dad, although my parents weren't together, I still realize people, like parents or people who co-parent, when something happens to one, like that's going to also, they're going to grieve as well. So lots to manage during that time. And as you said, like life still goes on. I feel like it was a lot. And I feel like my friends or my roommates definitely at business school, they could hear every conversation. They knew when I'm coming back from the hospital. So they were very good people to kind of lean on. And I'm like, hey, like, I don't even know you guys. Like I got lifelong friends, right, that I know am much stronger. So I think that's what also helped me bond more, because how much of the traumatic experience I was having outside of school with the folks at business school, because some of them had full insight to what I was having to go through and still study and still just like deliver for the cluster, et cetera. Like it was a lot. And then I eventually lost her in my second semester of my first year. So my mom passed away March 1st of 2017. So think about going through that, trying to keep high spirits, trying to look for change, and then you like completely lose, your mom. And this is all before I even graduate from this program. So a lot of that was like just remembering what she reminded me, because she had lupus and she was just like, I'm not gonna always be here. But because she saw whatever she saw in me, she's like, you can't stop. She's like, I will roll over in my grave and haunt your ass. if you stop, you can't stop. Like I need you to continue the path you're on. She's like, cry. Yeah, you want to cry. You want to grieve. Do it. Take some time off. Do it, but don't stop. And until this day, like I feel like I'm continuously keeping my promise, because it's not easy, right? Like when you lose a parent and know that you're about to hit every milestone after that without, one of your biggest champions there for you. So
absolutely. And that, again, talks to not only the courage, but the resilience, right,
yeah.
of Antonia, and how you continue to get hit with challenges, obstacles, and you continue to persevere. And it also speaks to, we don't always know the battles that people are going through, right? And people are fighting battles like you're in grad school and some of your peers and professors may have no idea, right? And you're just like showing up and still expected to deliver.
I think that's the part. Right. That is the part. And compartmentalizing. So understanding, do I even hold all these new people accountable for that? You don't even know me, right? Like, so why would I hold that on you? But then folks who were my close friends, so talk about community, folks who would check in and send a text message or like, hey girl, let's go out tonight. Like if you need a distraction, those folks who came to the rescue consistently. And still very close to this day. Like I have very different friend groups, but we'll check in at least once a year. And how are you doing, girl? Like what's going on in life? Minimally once a year with some friend groups, some monthly catch-ups, depending on everyone's in their different, availability or stage of life. But I'll say this, and I think I have to go off this, but community, power of like trusting in that. So whether it was, if you think about like me listening or the coachability, but also leaning on community when I'm at my worst and when I'm at my best. So that's one aspect I think that I continue to understand. How do I foster it no matter where I'm at? And then how do I continue to help people grow like within the community? So Philly, This is my immediate Vanguard, you name it. That's something that I've realized that's going to be what will continue to support me moving forward. Whether or not I have a parent or a loved one or a significant other nearby, it's going to be that for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. Okay. Quick rapid fire, like literally 30 seconds. One,
Okay.
I'm a big fan of people doing things that bring them joy, that aligns with what they do, and that also can make some money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help folks understand a range of how much money one can make in this type of career?
Oh, well, in financial services, so people will say the sky's the limit, but specifically in investment management, like 200 plus at my level, like at least at the senior level, 200K plus. Now, when it comes to the function and what you do, for example, if you were a trader at Vanguard, easy 350K. If you're running sales at Vanguard, could get you to 400K, right? So it all depends on what your function is within financial services, and then that your bonus structure will be set to that. But I will say it's probably between tech and financial services, private equity, investment management are your highest paying fintech. Most like we have that too. We have fintech within Vanguard as well. Those will be the highest paid roles and positions. And a lot of it, I will say, if you don't have the MBA, you have to have the certifications. So a CFA certification for a financial analyst or a CFP certification for financial planner. Those are big exams that if you take those and you don't have the MBA, that's enough accreditations to be able to do the roles or do jobs that will specifically get you to that upper level of payment. There's also additional, like I think it's the SIE, so sales, if you wanted to do sales in financial services, because you get commissioned off of the products, and financial products sell a lot. Taking some of those certifications, some of them you can do right in college or right after college, or you're with like while you're in college or right after. You don't need to have gone to somebody's Ivy League institution. You don't need any of that. So a lot of the certifications, and I know we're moving toward like a gig economy, like people building up their certifications and then getting whatever job they want. I would say if you want to double down on a good investment, a CFA, CFP, or sales accreditation program, I think that would be most useful.
Any media that you recommend for people? Any books, TV shows, podcasts, anything that you're like, this kind of helped me personally or professionally?
I realize like I always have a lot going on, right? Even now, right? And while you can sign up for all these different things, how you manage yourself, not just professionally, but also personally, matters. And I realized like sometimes people don't even know what they have or like want to do in life because they don't take the time. They don't carve out the time to do the work, to do the self-reflection, then to put structure to it for yourself. So this recent book, and I've been literally like my line sister put me onto it. I've been sharing it with every single person. It's called the 12-week year. So it helps you like, yes, it's about to tell you how to do what you think is going to take you a year to do in 12 weeks. But it also trains you to think about what's your goals for the next 10 years, 3 years, 1 year. What can you be doing differently every single day to reach those goals? And I feel like that has helped me tremendously in this last 6 or 7 months, even on things that I've been able to accomplish at work, things I've been able to accomplish personally, like financially. A lot of it helps to just keep structure. So I feel like not only keep structure, but then check back in with self weekly on progress towards that in a way that's not too intense. Because I realize like I can even be intense and critical on myself. It creates a space for me to go like, okay, for this week, I was able to work out today. Check. Towards my fitness of being a healthier human, period. Or today I have a gallon of water that I keep by my desk. Once I'm done with that today, I'm done. Right? Like, so just little things like that. So it doesn't feel overwhelming. And it's a quick win. That adds up to a lot over time. But yeah. So the 12-week year is the latest book. I also read books for fun. So not as much as like get organized in life, because I check in with friends quarterly and monthly. So talk about using people to do some of that progress and check in. And then I've had an executive coach. So the last 2 years, I've had executive coaches who will stop every month. We'll talk about progress towards, personal and professional growth. So I would recommend that if anyone was like, what should they sign up for, invest in, an executive coach, and just getting better at like self-check, self-reflection, and managing your time.
Love it. Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that the world should know about Antonia?
Stay tuned. There's more.
Love it.
That's what it was like. Stay tuned. There's more. Yeah. But I just want to thank you. This was a great experience. thanks for creating it. And for us, for the different, I don't know how many more people you have on your roster, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned. More to come, as a wise person once said.
Yes.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. This has been remarkable, and you're definitely holding up your end of the bargain. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and believe on the mission we're on, please like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, and share this podcast with your friends and your networks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Career Cheat Code, and tell us people or careers you would like to see highlighted. See you next week with some more cheat codes. Peace.